Hello dear chess friends, I'm International Master Andrey Ostrovskiy and you're welcome to the series of lessons dedicated to King and Pawn Endgames. In this one we're going to discuss a very important topic of Zugzwang. So in a given position we can notice very active position of the white's king, right? So the material is even, but position of the white's king makes white's chances very high because king is very active, it has the access to very important squares. It is much closer to black's pawns than black's king to white's pawns, which means that actually every move makes black's position worse. So in such a situation, it is very important not to hurry up, and the best strategy is frequently just to wait a bit. And white should play here g3. After this move, black's position is really very hard. It is very hard to make a good decision. Because, for example, if pawn c6 moves, then it weakens d5 square, so king goes to d5 and simply grabs the pawn. If pawn g7 moves somewhere, let's say to g6, then simply f6 becomes very weak, so the king inevitably will get the access to this square sooner or later, because black can't really keep the king on e7 for unlimited amount of time. So sooner or later this king will be forced to move, and well, white will have the access to either f6 square or let's say d6 square, so pawn can't move as well. So actually what black can do here is just to move the king. Of course, king f7 makes no sense because it leaves d6 not protected immediately, so black has to play king d7. After this move we can see that at least d6 is protected, so white has no direct access to f6 square at the moment because pawn g7 protects this square. But now looks like white has a chance to get to g7 pawn because king went away from that pawn. So let's have a look at this straightforward plan. King goes to f5. Well, this looks like gives black a chance for a counterplay. So let's say king d6, king g6, king goes to d5, king takes g7, king goes to d4, g4, king takes d3, g5, c5, and now we can see that both sides promote pawns at the same time. So g6, c4, king f6, c3, g7, c2, g8, c1 with a draw. Which gives us a good hint. So in this position, it's too early to play king f5, king g6, because it gives black a counterplay, but if we manage to push our g pawn further and make it a bit closer to the promotion square, well, at some point this plan will be possible to embody. So g4 is the correct move here, king goes to e7, and now g5. So in this situation, this active counterplay connected with attacking white's pawn d3 and promoting pawn c6 no longer looks very dangerous because white's pawn is very close to promotion square. But anyway, black has nothing better than playing king to d7. Well, king f7 is also possible, but in this case, after king d6, king g6, king takes g5, white is just faster. d4, d5, d6, d7, d8 queen. So after g2, it is not a problem to stop the pawn, so queen goes to d1, and then blockades the pawn, and it is an easily winning position for white. If pawn goes to c5 in this position, we already discussed, king simply goes to d5 and takes the pawn. And if g6, then after d4, the king is forced to move because black runs out of pawn moves, and white's king achieves the access to either f6 or d6 squares, and this means white wins one of black's pawn's next move. And by the way, this position is already a position of the Zugzwang, a classic example. So as we can see, Zugzwang is the situation when it is your turn to move, but every move makes your position worse. So here, every black's move makes his position worse. So let's continue with the main line. It is king to d7, and now king goes to f5. Just like we discussed, this active counterplay connected with attacking d-pawn and promoting c-pawn no longer makes sense because white's pawn g5 is very close to promotion square. White will be simply faster. So black has to passively protect pawn g7, king gets to e7, king g6, king f8. But white has additional options here. So king goes to h7, and after king f7, d4. Very important move. And black is in Zugzwang because every move makes a position worse. So if king goes away from the g7 pawn, white simply takes it. If king goes to f8, then white plays g6, forcing the king to go away or to play c5, giving up a pawn, and white easily wins here. And finally, if g6, then white just waits a bit after king h6, and again the same position, the same situation. So black inevitably has to give up a pawn or to lose another pawn. So once again, black is in Zugzwang. Honestly, everything after g5 is pretty much forced. So we can say that already after g5, black is in Zugzwang. So every move makes black's position worse. In this particular case, it means losing one. The question is, why not to start with the g4 in the initial position? So we discussed g3 line, right? So why not g4? Appears that after g4, white has no enough quantity of waiting moves. So king goes to d7, g5, king goes to e7, and white is in Zugzwang. So we have the same position, but white's turn to move. So now if, let's say, king to f5, then king f7, simply blockading white's path to the g6 and h7. If white plays d4, then after king d7, king f5, king goes to e7, king goes to g6, and king goes to f8, protecting the pawn. And now after king h7 and king f7, in our line with the g3, white had the chance to play d4. Here, pawn is already on d4, so white doesn't have this waiting move, which means that this position is simply very bad for white. So if g6 now, then king goes to f6, and white is in Zugzwang. White loses a pawn. That's a big problem. So this teaches us a very important thing. So when you play for a Zugzwang, and well, if you have a choice, usually it is very important to save tempi, right? So if you have a chance to put your pawn on one square towards opponent's camp, well, just do it. It is a general rule. Of course, you have to calculate everything accurately in a concrete position. So concrete position, of course, is a paramount. But as a general rule, if you have a chance to save tempi, like here, you should do that. So instead of making this active move g4, you make a bit less active move g3, but as it shows here, you just manage to save tempi. And this tempi will be very, very important in the future play for Zugzwang. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next lessons.